I think the greatest obstacle that is currently facing a genuine or authentic religiosity or spirituality is individualism. The belief in the individual as if it were the ultimate reality. And I think that you can find this on a couple of fronts. It's not just popular consumer capitalist culture all around you with the me individualism, but it's also the religious beliefs of a personal afterlife, the belief in the personal immortality of an individual soul. You look at the fact that people still bury bodies because they believe in the physical resurrection of the body. This is a deep-seated individualism that I think, as I would again suggest, is part of the major obstacle to a genuine spirituality and religiosity. Now, I think there are at least many reasons for why this individual bias, how this emerged, and one of the ways to look at it, and again, there are several reasons. I think one of the things is the dominance of visual bias in Western culture and in Western history. It certainly is related to the alphabet and to the rise of Renaissance science. Science, if we do want to be critical about science, I think science does have a prejudice, and the prejudice is that it suggests as if what it does is relies upon what's empirical and what's measurable. And that's partly true, but it's really true that in science, seeing is believing, and it turns everything that it wants to deal with into something visual. Take, in the particular case would be sound and speech. Speech is a kind of interiority in which we find ourselves. Speech is the exemplar case of what we mean by a person. A person somehow becomes manifest as a situation that others can find themselves in through speech. And that's what you'd never disclose from a scientific orientation toward speech. Speech, as sound anyway, has to be turned into something visual within the scientific frame. In fact, if you look at science, what first thing they'll do is they'll turn sound into frequency waves and other things that can be measured through the eye. Now, I'm not trying to be critical of science. I'm just suggesting that when science treats sound, it turns it into something seen, and it's this visual bias that I'm trying to get at, and how that relates to the sense of individualism that I think is this obstacle to a religious view or to a spiritual view. Now, related to this is the way that we encounter ourselves versus the way that we encounter others. Now, when you look out in the world and you see other people, I may have talked about this in other videos, when you look out in the world and you see other people, you see a figure against a background. They look like they're an object, almost. There's a figure, and then they're over against that environment. They look like they're a discrete whole. But for your own body, you never experience yourself that way. You're continuous with the world in the sense that the way the world rolls outwardly from where your head isn't. And so, what's interesting is when you look at others, you look at others and you see them, and they look like a figure against a background, and then or I think we comparatively say, oh, I must be just like that. And there is some truth to that. Yes, I'm also in physical space, and I'm just an object that others can see. But we should also do the more dialectical move, which is to sort of step back and realize that, oh, that person also doesn't have a face for themselves. Yeah, they experience the world through a kind of headlessness of not being able to experience their own face in a direct manner. Now, they can use a mirror or some sort of visual aid like a computer screen or something like this. But there is a big difference between the first-person perspective and a third-person perspective. I think the last thing that I would suggest is that, and it's related again to this first-person versus third-person distinction, is to return people to the question of the meaning of dreamless sleep. And the meaning of dreamless sleep, not simply as it's scientifically studied in the third person of how, what the brain state is and what the current processes are when one is in fact dreamlessly asleep. It's more from the first person to realize that every day I recess from all worldly cares, and to see my awakeness as a periodic achievement, to fully reckon with the fact that every day I wake up and I experience myself as having been undifferentiated. And then I can look at others and know that they have had that exact same experience. All of these different cases, what they're trying to help illustrate is that we're not separate from the cosmos. In some way, I am something that the universe is doing. I'm a place and moment of it. I am the way that certain aspects of others come into existence, in the same way that certain aspects of me only come into existence through others. The same could be said of the universe.